Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the grading companies. I have the 5 top grading companies, and we're going to talk about the difference between each of them, the pros and the cons, and where they each fit in their own individual space. So to get started, here are the 5 grading companies. We have SGC, BGS, PSA, HGA, and CSG. I tried to do a Trout update rookie across the board, but HGA did not have any. They only had this Trout card on eBay, and CSG didn't even have a Trout card that I could find. So those are both very new. So let's get started. So I asked on my Instagram post, I have about 2,500 followers, and I asked them to kind of help me rank these grading companies so it wasn't just my subjectivity. So I did PSA or BGS, and 88% said PSA and 12% said BGS, which wasn't surprising. But I was surprised by BGS or SGC for second and third place. BGS had a 92% over SGC at 8%. I think a lot of people have been turned off by SGC recently, and BGS has taken a huge proportion there. And this next one, it says, who do you trust more for grading? Or like, who would you buy? HGA or CGC? I meant CSG. They're the same company. CGC is their gaming, CSG is their sports card. So I think people understood that. Maybe a couple didn't, but overall, it's pretty obvious people liked HGA. They look a lot better and people gravitated towards them. So we have PSA first, BGS second, SGC third, HGA fourth, and CSG at fifth. And the final thing I asked is, will SGC get passed as the third best grading company by HGA or CGC? And a majority of people said yes, which I thought was very interesting since SGC's been around forever and they're really reputable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these companies. Here's the rankings: PSA 1, 2, BGS, 3, SGC, 4, HGA, and 5, CSG. And here is what each abbreviation stands for. I'm going to go from 5th to 1st. So we're going to start with CSG, and I'm going to go pretty quick over the first 2 and then get to the 3 major grading companies and talk about them. So I started off, we have CSG, which is the brand new grading company. A very unique slab compared to the other players in the game. Here are the pros. They're huge in their industry. They grade comics, they grade currency, they grade Pokemon cards. And so because of that, they should be able to come over to sports cards relatively easy, and they'll be able to scale if they need to. They have a huge facility, and I read they have like 500 employees that can help grade or something crazy that just shows they'll be able to handle the amount of people coming in. And on top of that, they are reputable in other places already. Their cons is they kind of have ugly slabs. That was the main thing I heard from people when I was asking these polls. I had other questions I didn't show, but I said, like, what do you think of this slab? Would you ever grade at them? And it was a definite no. Obviously, you can tell the flip or the label is like a huge proportion of the card. Probably like it would cover 30% of the card itself. So that's one thing. And on top of that, because of the ugly slabs, they're not super favorable, and they've not really gotten into collectors' eyes or on their good side at the very beginning. And like I said, their slabs are large because the label is unnecessarily big. So now we have HGA, which is hybrid grading approach. The pros for them is they're super customizable. You can see on the flip right here, this label, you can make it match the card colors. So it's blue and red, and it matches that up there. You can make it match a team color, which would be white and red for Trout's jersey, or you can have their standard grading label. AI has been used on some of their cards. I don't know the full in-depth, like how AI is used. I'm guessing it's mainly for the centering and possibly edges and corners, because those are really easy for a computer to say, yeah, that's flat, or that centering is perfect if you're able to drag it to the edges of the centers and figure that all out. And on top of that, they do meet their turnaround times. A lot of the grading companies do not, but the only downside of them meeting their turnaround times is they only accept a specific number of cards each week. If you don't get yours in, you don't get yours in. And the color match, again, that's one pro for them. People predict this company will pass SGC, like we talked about earlier, which I think is crazy. And their cons is the color match, in my opinion, is a con, because after a while, these slabs are not going to be the same. You look at BGS, you look at SGC, and even PSA, all their labels are consistent. So if you have cards that are different colors, they just look good in uniformity across the board. But let's say this Mike Trout card, there could be 3 different slabs, 3 different flips up here that could be on this card. So if I wanted to collect, the set here, that'd all be different. That might turn off some collectors. I asked some people if it would turn them off. About half said yes, it would turn them off, half said it wouldn't, but still, it's a pretty large proportion. Like I said, they have a limited acceptance of people who can send their cards in. And the one thing I don't like is that their 9.5 gem mint cards can have 8.5 subgrades. BGS and other grading companies don't allow 8.5 subgrades to let you have a 9.5 gem mint card, but with HGA you can. So you could have an 8.5 centering and this could be gem mint, or an 8.5 corners and this could be gem mint. There's a ton of BGS cards that are just 0.5 away, meaning they have all 9.5 subs and then one 8.5 other sub, and those are 9s there. And if that was the case for HGA, it could really help make their gem mint cards not worth nearly as much. And people might not like these slabs long term because it is super modern looking and it might not age well. Next up, we have SGC, getting into the big three here. SGC is a very unique company, and we can talk about some things that have happened with them recently. Their pros is they're great for vintage. They're probably the number one for pre-war vintage cards. You like the tobacco cards, they're probably number one there. PSA is second. You have a chance at the gold label right here. So you have BGS, SGC, and PSA. The gold label 10 is probably the second best grade out of all of them you can get. Gold label 10s are hard to get though because it means it's virtually a flawless card, no errors, no problems, nothing. So this card right here is listed on PWCC for $25,000, while the PSA 10 sells for about $5,000 to $6,000. Obviously it's just listed for $25,000, doesn't mean anybody's gonna buy it, but it is over 15 grand. So it is like 2.5 times worth more than a PSA 10 is what it is on average. So that's one thing you want to consider, is you have a shot at a card like this. Really hard to get, but you have a shot. The cases present really well. You can see how it pops out the white border with the black outside. So that's one really good thing about it. And the cons, they have low value on modern. I will show a graph at the end of this that talks about the value of each card in comparison to another with the Mike Trout card between SGC, PSA, and BGS, and you'll see it lags behind in almost every category. So one thing that happened this last year is I don't know if it was the CEO or someone high up in SGC went on to Cardboard Connection, an interview, and he talked about how SGC is the way of the future. BGS and PSA are terrible because they can't scale large enough. We'll be able to scale so fast. We're gonna be perfect, and we'll meet our wait times no matter what. You'll not have any of your cards stay longer than they need to be, which 2 weeks later turned out to be a complete lie, and they are probably just as bad, if not worse, than other grading companies in regards to getting cards out to people. So that was kind of a public annoyance to a lot of collectors who heard that interview, send their cards in, and SGC kind of screwed them. And because of that, that's why they're so unfavorable right now between PSA and BGS. And again, slow turnaround times is another con for them. So let's talk about Beckett. This is a BGS 10 that sold for $21,000 last week. A PSA 10 sells for $5,000 to $6,000 currently. So that is the pro. But BGS 10, out of all the grades, is probably third behind the black label BGS 10, which means every single subgrade is a 10. This is a 9.5, so because it's centering slightly off, maybe left to right, you can kind of see it barely. But because it's not completely perfect, it's a pristine 10, but if that was a 10, this would be a black label and be worth a fortune. But a BGS 10 does sell for the highest, aside from the black label 10 or the SGC version of black label 10, a gold label 10. So those are the two highest. This is the third. It's much higher than anything you could get at PSA, which is a pro. You can go to BGS and get a super valuable card. The con of that is you only can get a BGS 10 or a black label about 4 to 5% of the time, which is not perfect. Okay, so the one thing I do like about BGS myself, and this is why I have a lot of my cards that are PC cards in these cases, is because the cases are thick, they won't get bent. If you drop it, it usually doesn't have any issues damaging the card. There's been times it breaks out of the inner sleeve and can damage it, but that's really rare. But on top of that, these inner sleeves, they help the card not slide around. So this Mike Trout card, you can tell it's really thin paper. So the stock is really thin, and if you move it around, it's stationary. It doesn't have any give. So that's one thing I really enjoy about BGS slabs. They're good for thick cards. BGS is the #1 grading company for RPAs, just because PSA and SGC cases are usually really thin, and if you get a PSA card with a thick card, they bounce around again, which is a bummer because it can ding corners and edges, and it just doesn't match the rest of the PSA slabs, while a thick card is pretty close in size to the BGS case. And they are cheaper than PSA for the higher end grading stuff, like a PSA 2 days, $220, and then if you want to go with BGS, you can get it all the way down to $120. So it is a little bit cheaper, which is a pro. So the con, I don't know if I listed this one, but the actual subgrades hurt the card. So right here, this is a BGS 10 pristine, but let's say it was a 9.5. So let's say it's a 9.5, and it was 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, That is a min gem, or minimum gem, meaning it is the minimum subgrades that you can have to get a gem mint card. People don't pay for those as much as a 9.5 card that had 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, all of 9.5, or 9.5, 10, 9.5, 9.5. Each of those that has a little bit higher subgrades is worth a little bit more and a little bit more. So people are paying slightly different prices for these cards. So people will be paying a little bit more for a true gem 9.5 versus a min gem 9.5, which just devalues some of them. BGS has pretty recently released a 9.5 grade you can get that does not have subgrades. So that could be a solution to that, but that's why people like BGS, is because of the subgrades that would hurt them. So now let's look about the cons. A gem mint card, which is a 9.5 for BGS, is worth less than a PSA gem mint card, which is a 10. PSA does not have any pristine grades. They don't have, like on the label, you can see pristine here. SGC also has pristine grades. Their 10 and up is pristine, and their actual 9.5 is considered gem mint as well. So the gem mint 9.5s are worth less than the PSA gem mint 10s. So obviously some of the gem mint 10s would get BGS 10s, but it'd probably be the exact same proportion of cards, that 5% that would get the BGS 10. So that's the confusing scale. I kind of already covered it, but that's like the whole min gem versus true gem plus, where there's 3 9.5s and a 10. All those things can kind of get confusing for people, especially those that are new in the hobby, and that can be a turn off for them. So inconsistent slabs is a huge issue in my eyes that I don't love, especially now because there have been some fake slabs that you're kind of seeing. There's been a few fake slabs made, and it's hard to tell what the differences are, because you can see up here, like this font is different between cards. The font can be slightly separated a little bit more, or they can be a little bit darker, a little bit wider. Like all these things make it hard to tell what is true and what is fake. The little trademark right here can be a little bit different between slabs, and that's one thing I don't like. Right here, this little dot you can see is currently how people can tell that the card is not fraudulent, because in the past, all the fraudulent cards do not have that dot, but that is an easy fix, like the patent dot 629, whatever. That can easily be fixed for those people that are making these fake cards and have that dot moving forward. So that's one downside. These perforated edges are also a sign that the card is legitimate, because that's on the true cards, while the fake card is completely flat on all sides and on the back. So the slabs aren't as clear. That's one last final thing that's not great, because of the inner sleeve that keeps it stationary. It is a little bit harder to see. It's not super clear. It doesn't reflect as well in lighting, so you can't get as good of photos. So let's go to PSA. The pros of PSA, highest ROI. You have about a 50% chance to get a PSA 10 versus a 50% chance to get a BGS 9.5. But the BGS card, you have a 5% chance to get a 10 or up versus 50% with the PSA 10. It's a simple and consistent label. All the labels look like this. With BGS, you have labels that are 9.5s, 10s are gold. The perfect 10 is a black label, so it's black. Then you have 8.5 to 9 are silver, and below are white. So it's just super confusing. With PSA, this gem mint card right here and a PSA 4 looks exactly the same. It's an easy to understand scale. They do have like 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. They don't have 9.5, so they go from 9 to 10, but that's okay in my eyes. They are good for modern and vintage. PSA is able to compete against SGC for vintage and BGS for modern, because it's good for both and carries a premium for both of them. Their registry is something that people really like. It just shows who has the best collection of that specific card. So you can enter the exact serial number you have, and you can show other people your entire registry and keep track of it all. That's a really big plus for PSA collectors. Not as much for the flippers and stuff, but that is a big part for some collectors. And their slabs are clear. There's no inner sleeve, so you can see through perfectly fine. Let's get to the cons. Cards can get damaged, and people might not agree with this, but it has happened to me and it has happened to others, and it's all over forums if you want to read about it. See this little lip right here on each side? It's rounded, so it's most likely not going to damage the card, but let's say it's shipping, because the really thin stock like this Mike Trout rookie or other cards from flagship, they can slide around and go ding, 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 and just hit the edge over and over and over again. And if it hits hard in shipping, or if somebody drops it, it will completely destroy the edge of the card. I've had it happen to some pretty high-end cards of mine in shipping, which sucks when you pay a lot of money for one and it comes in slightly damaged because of that. So that's one thing you want to consider. And I think PSA is actually taking steps to fix that. I heard someone say they put a protective sleeve on the inside, like a little piece of plastic that keeps it stationary, but I haven't seen it myself. That's just what I've heard on Instagram. They're not great for thick cards like we talked about, just because they do slide around a lot. It's really thick as well, which isn't great. They have really long turnaround times. I could say that about any grading company, but PSA specifically, their bulk submission orders is going to be probably a year or longer right now if you wanted to do that. So you wouldn't see your cards. I submitted some in January. I don't plan on having them back till at least December, which sucks because they're PC cards. They're dual service, so BGS will grade the autograph of the card, which is a pro for them, I should have put in there. They'll grade the autograph of the card for you automatically. With this, they do not grade the autograph on the card automatically, which is a con because people will send in cards with really smudged autographs or faded autographs here, get a Gem Mint 10 and sell it for a lot, but the buyer should be aware that the autograph is not perfect. But if you wanted to pay for them to get the autograph graded, you can, but it's going to cost more and take longer. And some 10s aren't 10s. This is due to the damage of the cards that can dance around. But also because there's no 9-5 middle ground, there's going to be some 9s that on any given day could have been 10s and some 10s on any given day that could have been 9s. And so you might be paying a premium for some cards that aren't perfect. I've graded some cards where I was shocked to have it return as a 10, and I sold it for a premium. It was an $800 card versus a $3,000 card, whether it was a 9 or a 10. And I just wanted the 9 with PSA and it graded out, which shocked me. And so just be aware some 10s aren't perfect necessarily. Anyways, I just wanted to present all this to you guys, help you kind of know the difference between the grading companies and what you can expect with each of them. Let me know what your thoughts are down below, what else you would have in the pros and cons category of each of these grading companies. And other than that, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video.